In the last devlog I created this beautiful concept map for my game. It's calming, it's relaxing, but it has a very serious flaw. You can't play it. The game doesn't have a character, but that's going to change today. As usual, I started by doing some research and organized the ideas of what I needed to do into this little outline. In a very general way, it boils down to creating a character and animating it. But who's going to be your character? To help you get a visual idea of who is going to be, I unleashed 100% of my drawing skills and made this masterpiece of concept art. Meet Bob. Bob likes cats, he feeds mostly on Danny's videos, and he believes in the PC master race supremacy. First step, create a character. Traditionally, video game devs create their own characters by modeling or sculpting them from scratch. But modeling a character is not as easy as it seems. You must have a very good knowledge of human anatomy, and that is a skill that takes a long time to dominate. I have tried to model characters in the past and the results have been, well... So in my journey of trying to skip the step of modeling a character from scratch, I came across 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗑, which is a program to create anime-style characters where you only have to change some parameters and it's free. I didn't bother modifying the character too much, cause I only needed it as a base to get the body proportions right. 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗑 uses a weird format when exporting the characters, so after many failed attempts to import it into Blender, I found this plugin that allowed me to do just that. But my boy was getting cold. He didn't have any clothes, so I created one for him. For this, I used Marvelous Designer, which is probably the best soft for this task and only requires you to know a little bit of sewing. I'm serious, you need to sew the clothing pieces together as if they were real clothes. I wasn't expecting that. So I imported my boy and started dressing him. I gave him pants, a t-shirt and a hoodie, and back in Blender I made him some shoes and a mask. I know you're thinking, oh, a mask, how original, no other indie games has ever done that. But trust me, making a face is more trouble than you can imagine, and I don't want to risk Bob falling into the uncanny valley. It's not a great design, but at least I won't have to rate my game as 18+ anymore. After I gave him his first clothes, Bob was happy. I could see it in his face, but even though I asked him for a hug, he didn't give it to me. And that's when I realized little Bob has no bones. You see, for a 3D character to move, it needs to have a skeleton. This skeleton is made up of bones, and each bone is in charge of moving some vertices. Rigging a character is a complicated task, but luckily for me, Blender comes with a plugin called Rigify, which creates a skeleton with all the bones needed to animate and a couple of extra features to make our lives easier. So I adapted the Rigify skeleton to Bob's body, which is the easy part. The hard part comes when I started the weight painting. Each bone needs to move certain vertices. For example, this bone here moves the hand, this bone here moves the leg. But not only that, you see these colors here? These colors determine the weight. Blue means that the bone has no influence on those vertices, red means that it has total influence, and the intermediate colors represent other values between 0 and 1. Not only that, each vertex can be moved by several bones. In short, there are too many things to keep in mind. After many tries, I was finally able to do a decent weight painting. It's not perfect, some parts of the body don't deform well and the clothes clips a little, but hey, it's good enough for now. Bob was completed, time to put him into the game. I imported the 3D model and hey, everything looks fine. Let me check the skeleton. It turns out that Unreal uses centimeters as unit of measure, while Blender uses meters, so the whole skeleton gets fucked. Long story short, if you plan to use Blender to make characters for your game and use them in Unreal, you have to set the unit scale to 0.01, then scale the 3D model and the skeleton by 100, apply that transformation, and then when you put your character into Unreal, it will work. Don't ask me why, I have no idea, but it works. Once Bob's bones were right, I could finally start with the animations. There are two ways I can do this. First one is to borrow animations from other characters and put them into Bob, and second one is to do the animations myself. Speaking of animations, Brian from 3D Animation Hub contacted me and wanted me to let you know about his animation courses. If you are interested in animation and want to become a good animator, I highly recommend you to check out his channel. And if you have some extra money, to keep an eye on his courses. He currently has a course that covers all the basics of animation in Blender. And on March 17th, he will release his new course that has been on the making for about 2 years. I'll leave links in the description below in case you are interested. For today's video, I'm only going to use already made animations, cause I don't want to take too long. So how does this work? Unreal has a retargeting system that allows to copy the animations from one skeleton to another. For example, in one of the live streams, one of the developers was retargeting the animations from the Unreal mannequin to a lion, and the results were surprisingly good. So fold up, I got you my boy. So I took the character from ALS, which is a free project with a bunch of locomotion animations, and one of the characters from Mixamo, set them up, and Bob is moving. This of course worked at first try, cause I am a real game developer and I definitely didn't have to do it several times. The next step, as many of you already imagined, was to do cel shading. Cel shading is a type of non-photorealistic rendering that divides the lighting into bands to achieve an effect like you can see in anime or games like Zelda or Genshin Impact. This is mostly done in Unreal using a post-processed material, which gives access to different layers of the final image that is rendered on screen in each frame. For example, I can have access to the final render, the world normals, or what interests us, the lighting and the diffuse color. Very briefly, to achieve the cel shading effect, we take the lighting gradient and divide it into bands by doing some math, and then these bands are used to darken the diffuse color. In my first attempt, I followed this great article by Tommy Tran and implemented a basic cel shading. It looked good, but it had a small problem: it didn't take into account the color of the other light sources. Luckily for me, this is a problem that Prismatica Dev solved before and made a tutorial about it, so I just joined his implementation, adapted it to mine, and it was ready. Oh, I also added an outline, but I don't have much to say about it, so let's go for the next step: colors. There's something you don't know about me: I'm a master of color. So after a deep study and many hours of analysis, I created the best possible color palette for Bob's clothes. I painted him and I have to say, Bob looks so goddamn sexy now. Finally, it was all done. I played the game and Bob move. Bob, listen to me. Bob move, you son of... We're not done yet. I need a character controller to give orders to Bob. There are two main components that make up a character controller: a character blueprint and an animation blueprint. The character blueprint is in charge, among many other things, of receiving inputs from the player and deciding what Bob should do, while the animation blueprint is in charge of choosing what animation Bob should play. Let's get started. Movement. This wasn't too hard. Unreal has this very cool feature called Animation Blend Space, where you can put several animations and based on some value you can blend between them. It's basically magic. This way, using his own speed, Bob can now blend between idle, walking and running, jumping, crouching, rolling. Psst, psst. Between you and me, I know you're a Dark Souls fan. I know you love to roll like there are no other moves in the game. This one is for you. This was easy to implement. I created an animation sequence which plays when the player presses the Alt key, and that's all. Maybe I'm too good at this. Swimming. Swimming requires another kind of logic, but it's also quite simple. When the character enters a volume in which it can swim, the movement mode changes, as well as the values of properties such as gravity and friction. The state in the animation blueprint also changes, and a different set of animations is used. This is a super basic implementation, but Bob doesn't really like to swim that much either. Climbing. This is where things got really difficult. To make the climbing system, I'm using a multisphere trace by channel to determine what objects the player collides with and determine how it should behave. For example, if the sphere collides with this flat wall, we can know the world space location of the collision and the normal of the surface. And with this data, the character is placed. Very easy, isn't it? What happens if the sphere collides with an irregular surface, or if it collides with two or more surfaces? To control what to do with the character in these situations, you need to know a little bit of vector math, and let me tell you a little secret. I don't know shit about vector math, so I better add this to the to-do list and let the future Robert take care of this problem. It's been a month since the last devlog. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to do everything I planned, and the character still has a lot to improve. I still need to finish the swimming and climbing systems, add eye case and other small procedural animation stuff to complement the animations, but as it is currently, it's good enough. If you have any ideas of what other movement mechanics we can add to Bob, leave them in the comments and I'll add them to the list. By the way, I want to thank all of you. This last month was amazing. The last devlog got a ton of views, we are already 4,000 in the channel and the feedback in general has been awesome. Thank you all so much for the encouragement and for joining me in this journey. See you in the next video.